Chapter 36 of A Passage to India by E. M. Forster. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 36. All the time the palace ceased not to thrum and tum-tum. The revelation was over, but its effect lasted, and its effect was to make men feel that the revelation had not yet come. Hope existed, despite fulfillment, as it will be in heaven. Although the god had been born, his procession, loosely supposed by many to be the birth, had not taken place. In normal years, the middle hours of this day were signalized by performances of great beauty in the private apartments of the Rajah. He owned a troop of men and boys, whose duty it was to dance various actions and meditations of his faith before him. Seated at his ease, he could witness the 3 steps by which the Saviour ascended the universe to the discomfiture of Indra, also the death of the dragon, the mountain that turned into an umbrella, and the sadhu who, with comic results, invoked the god before dining. All culminated in the dance of the milk-maidens before Krishna, and in the still greater dance of Krishna before the milk-maidens, when the music and the musicians swirled through the dark blue robes of the actors into their tinsel crowns, and all became one. The Rajah and his guests would then forget that this was a dramatic performance, and would worship the actors. Nothing of the sort could occur today, because death interrupts. It interrupted less here than in Europe. Its pathos was less poignant, its irony less cruel. There were 2 claimants to the throne, unfortunately, who were in the palace now, and suspected what had happened. Yet they made no trouble, because religion is a living force to the Hindus, and can, at certain moments, fling down everything that is petty and temporary in their natures. The festival flowed on, wild and sincere, and all men loved each other, and avoided by instinct whatever could cause inconvenience or pain. Aziz could not understand this any more than an average Christian could. He was puzzled that Mao should suddenly be purged from suspicion and self-seeking. Although he was an outsider and excluded from their rites, they were always particularly charming to him at this time. He and his household received small courtesies and presents just because he was outside. He had nothing to do all day except to send the embrocation over to the guest-house, and towards sunset he remembered it, and looked round his house for a local palliative, for the dispensary was shut. He found a tin of ointment belonging to Mohammed Latif, who was unwilling it should be removed, for magic words had been spoken over it while it was being boiled down. But Aziz promised that he would bring it back after application to the stings. He wanted an excuse for a ride. The procession was beginning to form as he passed the palace. A large crowd watched the loading of the state palanquin, the prow of which protruded in the form of a silver dragon's head through the lofty half-opened door. Gods, big and little, were getting aboard. He averted his eyes, for he never knew how much he was supposed to see, and nearly collided with the Minister of Education. "Ah, you might make me late," meaning that the touch of a non-Hindu would necessitate another bath. The words were spoken without moral heat. "Sorry," said Aziz. The other smiled, and again mentioned the guest-house party, and when he heard that Fielding's wife was not Miss Quested after all, remarked, "Ah, no, he married the sister of Mr. Heaslop. Ah, exactly, I have known that for over a year." Also without heat. "Why did you not tell me? Your silence plunged me into a pretty pickle." Godbolet, who had never been known to tell anyone anything, smiled again, and said in deprecating tones, "Never be angry with me. I am, as far as my limitations permit, your true friend. Besides, it is my holy festival." Aziz always felt like a baby in that strange presence, a baby who unexpectedly receives a toy. He smiled also, and turned his horse into a lane, for the crush increased. The sweepers' band was arriving. Playing on sieves and other emblems of their profession, they marched straight at the gate of the palace with the air of a victorious army. All other music was silent, for this was ritually the moment of the despised and rejected. The god could not issue from his temple until the unclean sweepers played their tune. They were the spot of filth without which the spirit cannot cohere. For an instant the scene was magnificent. The doors were thrown open, and the whole court was seen inside, barefoot and dressed in white robes. In the fairway stood the Ark of the Lord, covered with cloth of gold, and flanked by peacock fans and by stiff circular banners of crimson. It was full to the brim with statuettes and flowers. As it rose from the earth on the shoulders of its bearers, the friendly sun of the monsoons shone forth and flooded the world with colour, so that the yellow tigers painted on the palace walls seemed to spring, and pink and green skeins of cloud to link up the upper sky. The palanquin moved. The lane was full of state elephants who would follow it, their howdahs empty out of humility. Aziz did not pay attention to these sanctities, for they had no connection with his own. He felt bored, slightly cynical, like his own dear Emperor Babur, who came down from the north and found in Hindustan no good fruit, no fresh water or witty conversation, not even a friend. The lane led quickly out of the town onto high rocks and jungle. Here he drew rein and examined the great Mao tank, which lay exposed beneath him to its remotest curve. Reflecting the evening clouds, it filled the netherworld with an equal splendour, so that earth and sky leant toward one another, about to clash in ecstasy. He spat, cynical again, more cynical than before, for in the centre of the burnished circle a small black blotch was advancing, the guest-house boat. Those English had improvised something to take the place of oars, and were proceeding in their work of patrolling India. The sight endeared the Hindus by comparison, and looking back at the milk-white hump of the palace, he hoped that they would enjoy carrying their idol about, for at all events it did not pry into other people's lives. This pose of seeing India, which had seduced him to Miss Quested at Chandrapur, was only a form of ruling India. No sympathy lay behind it. He knew exactly what was going on in the boat as the party gazed at the steps down which the image would presently descend, and debated how near they might row without getting into trouble officially. He did not give up his ride, for there would be servants at the guest-house whom he could question. A little information never comes amiss. He took the path by the sombre promontory that contained the royal tombs. Like the palace, they were of snowy stucco, and gleamed by their internal light, but their radiance grew ghostly under approaching night. The promontory was covered with lofty trees, and the fruit bats were unhooking from the boughs, and making kissing sounds as they grazed the surface of the tank. Hanging upside down all day, they had grown thirsty. The signs of the contented Indian evening multiplied. Frogs on all sides, cow-dung burning eternally, a flock of belated hornbills overhead, looking like winged skeletons as they flapped across the gloaming. There was death in the air, but not sadness. A compromise had been made between destiny and desire, and even the heart of man acquiesced. The European guest-house stood 200 feet above the water, on the crest of a rocky and wooded spur that jutted from the jungle. By the time Aziz arrived, the water had paled to a film of mauve grey, and the boat vanished entirely. A sentry slept in the guest-house porch. Lamps burned in the cruciform of the deserted rooms. He went from one room to another, inquisitive and malicious. 2 letters lying on the piano rewarded him, and he pounced and read them promptly. He was not ashamed to do this. The sanctity of private correspondence has never been ratified by the East. Moreover, Mr. McBride had read all his letters in the past and spread their contents. One letter, the more interesting of the 2, was from Heaslop to Fielding. It threw light on the mentality of his former friend, and it hardened him further against him. Much of it was about Ralph Moore, who appeared to be almost an imbecile. "Hand on my brother whenever suits you. I write to you because he is sure to make a bad blunderbuss." Then, "I quite agree. Life is too short to cherish grievances. Also, I'm relieved you feel able to come into line with the oppressors of India to some extent. We need all the support we can get. I hope that next time Stella comes my way she will bring you with her, when I will make you as comfortable as a bachelor can. It's certainly time we met. My sister's marriage to you, coming after my mother's death and my own difficulties, did upset me, and I was unreasonable. It is about time we made it up properly, as you say. Let us leave it at faults on both sides. Glad to hear about your son and heir. When next any of you write to Adela, do give her some sort of message from me, for I should like to make my peace with her too. You are lucky to be out of British India at the present moment. Incident after incident, all due to propaganda, but we can't lay our hands on the connecting thread. The longer one lives here, the more certain one gets that everything hangs together. My personal opinion is it's the Jews." Thus far, the red-nosed boy. Aziz was distracted for a moment by blurred sounds coming from over the water. The procession was under way. The second letter was from Miss Quested to Mr. Fielding. It contained 1 or 2 interesting touches. The writer hoped that Ralph will enjoy his India more than I did mine, and appeared to have given him money for this purpose. My debt, which I shall never repay in person. What debt did Miss Quested imagine she owed the country? He did not relish the phrase. Talk of Ralph's health. It was all Stella and Ralph, even Cyril and Ronnie, all so friendly and sensible, and written in a spirit he could not command. He envied the easy intercourse that is only possible in a nation whose women are free. These 5 people were making up their little difficulties, and closing their broken ranks against the alien. Even Heaslop was coming in. Hence the strength of England, and in a spurt of temper he hit the piano, and since the notes had swollen and stuck together in groups of 3s, he produced a remarkable noise. "Oh, who is that?" said a nervous and respectful voice. He could not remember where he had heard its tones before. Something moved in the twilight of an adjoining room. He replied, "State doctor, ridden over to enquire. Very little English," slipped the letters into his pocket, and, to show that he had free entry to the guest-house, struck the piano again. Ralph Moore came into the light. What a strange-looking youth! Tall, prematurely aged, the big blue eyes faded with anxiety, the hair impoverished and tousled. Not a type that is often exported imperially. The doctor in Aziz thought born of too old a mother. The poet found him rather beautiful. I was unable to call earlier, owing to pressure of work. How are the celebrated bee stings? He asked patronizingly. I was resting. They thought I had better. They throb, rather. His timidity and evident newness had complicated effects on the malcontent. Speaking threateningly, he said, "Come here, please. Allow me to look." They were practically alone, and he could treat the patient as Calendar had treated Noureddin. "You said this morning?" "The best of doctors make mistakes. Come here, please, for the diagnosis, under the lamp. I am pressed for time." "Ow! What is the matter, pray?" "Your hands are unkind." He started and glanced down at them. The extraordinary youth was right, and he put them behind his back, before replying with outward anger, "What the devil have my hands to do with you? This is a most strange remark. I am a qualified doctor who will not hurt you." "I don't mind pain. There is no pain." "No pain?" "Not really." "Excellent news," sneered Aziz. "But there is cruelty." "I have brought you some salve, but how to put it on in your present nervous state becomes a problem," he continued after a pause. "Please leave it with me." "Certainly not. It returns to my dispensary at once." He stretched forward, and the other retreated to the farther side of a table. "Now, do you want me to treat your stings, or do you prefer an English doctor? There is one at Asirgar. Asirgar is 40 miles away, and the Ringnad Dam broken. Now you see how you are placed. I think I had better see Mr. Fielding about you. This is really great nonsense, your present behaviour." "They are out in a boat," he replied, glancing about him for support. Aziz feigned intense surprise. "They have not gone in the direction of Mao, I hope? On a night like this the people become most fanatical." And, as if to confirm him, there was a sob, as though the lips of a giant had parted. The procession was approaching the jail. "You should not treat us like this," he challenged, and this time Aziz was checked, for the voice, though frightened, was not weak. "Like what?" "Dr. Aziz, we have done you no harm." "Aha! You know my name, I see. Yes, I am Aziz. No, of course your great friend Miss Quested did me no harm at the Marabar." Drowning his last words, all the guns of the state went off. A rocket from the jail garden gave the signal. The prisoner had been released, and was kissing the feet of his singers. Rose-leaves fall from the houses, sacred spices and coconut are brought forth. It was the half-way moment. The god had extended his temple and paused exultantly. Mixed and confused in their passage, the rumours of salvation entered the guest-house. They were startled, and moved on to the porch, drawn by the sudden illumination. The bronze gun up on the fort kept flashing. The town was a blur of light, in which the houses seemed dancing, and the palace waving little wings. The water below, the hills and sky above, were not involved as yet. There was still only a little light and song struggling among the shapeless lumps of the universe. The song became audible through much repetition. The choir was repeating and inverting the names of deities. Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Krishna Radha, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, they sang, and woke the sleeping sentry in the guest-house. He leant upon his iron-tipped spear. "I must go back now. Good night," said Aziz, and held out his hand, completely forgetting that they were not friends, and focusing his heart on something more distant than the caves, something beautiful. His hand was taken, and then he remembered how detestable he had been, and said gently, "Don't you think me unkind any more?" "No." "How can you tell, you strange fellow?" "Not difficult. The one thing I always know." "Can you always tell whether a stranger is your friend?" "Yes." "Then you are an Oriental." He unclasped as he spoke, with a little shudder. Those words, he had said them to Mrs. Moore in the mosque, in the beginning of the cycle from which, after so much suffering, he had got free. Never be friends with the English. Mosque, caves, mosque, caves. And here he was, starting again. He handed the magic ointment to him. "Take this. Think of me when you use it. I shall never want it back. I must give you one little present, and it is all I have got. You are Mrs. Moore's son." "I am that," he murmured to himself, and a part of Aziz's mind that had been hidden seemed to move and force its way to the top. "But you are Hyslop's brother also, and, alas, the two nations cannot be friends." "I know. Not yet." "Did your mother speak to you about me?" "Yes." And with a swerve of voice and body that Aziz did not follow, he added, "In her letters, she loved you." "Yes, your mother was my best friend in all the world." He was silent, puzzled by his own gratitude. What did this eternal goodness of Mrs. Moore amount to? To nothing, if brought to the test of thought. She had not borne witness in his favour, nor visited him in prison. Yet she had stolen to the depths of his heart, and he always adored her. "This is our monsoon, the best weather," he said, while the lights of the procession waved as though embroidered on an agitated curtain. "How I wish she could have seen them, our rains! Now is the time when all things are happy, young and old. They are happy, out there with their savage noise, though we cannot follow them. The tanks are all full, so they dance. And this is India. I wish you were not with officials. Then I would show you my country. But I cannot. Perhaps I will just take you out on the water now, for one short half-hour." Was the cycle beginning again? His heart was too full to draw back. He must slip out into the darkness and do this one act of homage to Mrs. Moore's son. He knew where the oars were, hidden to deter the visitors from going out, and he brought the second pair, in case they met the other boat. The Fieldings had pushed themselves out with long poles, and might get into difficulties, for the wind was rising. Once on the water, he became easy. One kind action was with him always a channel for another, and soon the torrent of his hospitality gushed forth, and he began doing the honours of Mao, and persuading himself that he understood the wild procession, which increased in lights and sounds as the complications of its ritual developed. There was little need to row, for the freshening gale blew them in the direction they desired. Thorns scratched the keel, they ran into an islet, and startled some cranes. The strange temporary life of the August flood water bore them up, and seemed as though it would last forever. The boat was a rudderless dinghy. Huddled up in the stern, with the spare pair of oars in his arms, the guest asked no questions about details. There was presently a flash of lightning, followed by a second flash, little red scratches on the ponderous sky. "Was that the Rajah?" he asked. "What? What do you mean?" "Row back." But there's no Raja, nothing. Row back, you will see what I mean. Aziz found it hard work against the advancing wind, but he fixed his eyes on the pin of light that marked the guest-house, and backed a few strokes. There. Floating in the darkness was a king, who sat under a canopy in shining royal robes. "I can't tell you what that is, I'm sure," he whispered. "His Highness is dead. I think we should go back at once." They were close to the promontory of the tombs, and had looked straight into the chhatri of the Rajah's father through an opening in the trees. That was the explanation. He had heard of the image, made to imitate life at enormous expense, but he had never chanced to see it before, though he frequently rode on the lake. There was only one spot from which it could be seen, and Ralph had directed him to it. Hastily he pulled away, feeling that his companion was not so much a visitor as a guide. He remarked, "Shall we go back now?" "There is still the procession." "I'd rather not go nearer. They have such strange customs, and might hurt you." "A little nearer." Aziz obeyed. He knew with his heart that this was Mrs. Moore's son, and indeed, until his heart was involved, he knew nothing. Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Krishna Radha, went the chant, then suddenly changed, and in the interstices he heard, almost certainly, the syllables of salvation that had sounded during his trial at Chandrapur. "Mr. Moore, don't tell anyone that the Rajah is dead. It is a secret still. I am supposed not to say. We pretend he is alive until after the festival, to prevent unhappiness. Do you want to go still nearer?" "Yes." He tried to keep the boat out of the glare of the torches that began to star the other shore. Rockets kept going off, also the guns. Suddenly, closer than he had calculated, the palanquin of Krishna appeared from behind a ruined wall, and descended the carven, glistening water steps. On either side of it the singers tumbled, a woman prominent, a wild and beautiful young saint with flowers in her hair. She was praising God without attributes. Thus did she apprehend him. Others praised him without attributes, seeing him in this or that organ of the body, or manifestation of the sky. Down they rushed to the foreshore, and stood in the small waves, and a sacred meal was prepared, of which those who felt worthy partook. Old Godbole detected the boat, which was drifting in on the gale, and he waved his arms. Whether in wrath or joy, Aziz never discovered. Above stood the secular power of Mao, elephants, artillery, crowds. And high above them a wild tempest started, confined at first to the upper regions of the air. Gusts of wind mixed darkness and light. Sheets of rain cut from the north stopped, cut from the south, began rising from below, and across them struggled the singers, sounding every note but terror, and preparing to throw God away, God himself, not that God can be thrown, into the storm. Thus was he thrown year after year, and were others thrown, little images of Ganpati, baskets of 10-day corn, tiny taziyas after Muharram, scapegoats, husks, emblems of passage, a passage not easy, not now, not here, not to be apprehended, except when it is unattainable. The God to be thrown was an emblem of that. The village of Gokul reappeared on its tray. It was the substitute for the silver image, which never left its haze of flowers. On behalf of another symbol, it was to perish. A servitor took it in his hands and tore off the blue and white streamers. He was naked, broad-shouldered, thin-waisted, the Indian body again triumphant, and it was his hereditary office to close the gates of salvation. He entered the dark waters, pushing the village before him, until the clay dolls slipped off their chairs and began to gutter in the rain, and King Kanza was confounded with the father and mother of the Lord. Dark and solid, the little waves slipped. Then a great wave washed, and then English voices cried, "Take care!" The boats had collided with each other. The four outsiders flung out their arms and grappled, and, with oars and poles sticking out, revolved like a mythical monster in the whirlwind. The worshippers howled with wrath or joy as they drifted forward helplessly against the servitor who awaited them, his beautiful dark face expressionless, and as the last morsels melted on his tray, it struck them. The shock was minute, but Stella, nearest to it, shrank into her husband's arms, then reached forward, then flung herself against Aziz, and her motions capsized them. They plunged into the warm, shallow water and rose struggling into a tornado of noise. The oars, the sacred tray, the letters of Rani and Adela broke loose and floated confusedly. Artillery was fired, drums beaten, the elephants trumpeted, and drowning all, an immense peal of thunder, unaccompanied by lightning, cracked like a mallet on the dome. That was the climax, as far as India admits of one. The rain settled in steadily to its job of wetting everybody and everything through, and soon spoilt the cloth of gold on the palanquin and the costly disc-shaped banners. Some of the torches went out. Fireworks didn't catch. There began to be less singing, and the tray returned to Professor Godbole, who picked up a fragment of the mud adhering and smeared it on his forehead without much ceremony. Whatever had happened, and while the intruders picked themselves up, the crowds of Hindus began a desultory move back into the town. The image went back too, and on the following day underwent a private death of its own, when some curtains of magenta and green were lowered in front of the dynastic shrine. The singing went on even longer. Ragged edges of religion, unsatisfactory, undramatic tangles. God is love. Looking back at the great blur of the last 24 hours, no man could say where was the emotional center of it, any more than he could locate the heart of a cloud. End of chapter 36.